I recently came across a book called Long Pilgrimage by John Bennett. The book is a summary of the life and teachings of Shiva Puri Baba, who is an Indian saint. There were quite a few things that I found to be quite interesting and inspiring within the book related to the life and teachings of Shiva Puri Baba. So I decided to make a video about the same. In this video, I will be sharing the life of Shiva Puri Baba, and again, just sharing some points that I thought were particularly interesting and points that we could use to draw inspiration from. So Shiva Puri Baba was born in Kerala in 1826 to a Brahmin family. His grandfather was a renowned astrologer, and there were many princes and priests who came to him for astrological consultations. When Shiva Puri Baba was born, his grandfather had predicted that a sannyasi or a renunciate was born, and that their family line would now come to an end. And that is exactly what happened eventually, because Shiva Puri Baba is a renunciate Indian saint who is quite famous, mostly because of how practical and simple his teaching methods and styles were. But we'll get to his teaching methods and styles later. For now, let's go back to his birth and his childhood. So, as a child, around the age of 5, he um, entered into the Brahmacharya ashram, which is essentially how back in the day Indian society used to function. So there were the four stages of life. The first stage was when you start learning the Vedas and the ancient Indian scriptures and texts. So around the age of 5, he started his studies. He was broadly done with them by the age of 14, and he learnt everything from his grandfather, who was essentially his guru in this Brahmacharya ashram stage. Around the age of 18, he decided to leave his family home and live in the forest with his grandfather. So his grandfather at the time was at the third stage of his life, wherein you start to pull away from the world and live in a forest where you spend more time in studying, meditating, and indulging in spiritual practices. So around the age of 18, he left his family home and he lived with his grandfather in his forests. So, pulling away from the story about his life, let's speak about a few points that I found were quite interesting. One was that essentially that he was born in a family that was already quite religious and already quite renowned for their religion and spirituality. So the family belonged to the Brahmin caste, but it was also the highest of the Brahmin classes. So there are also subcastes within each class, but the family belonged to the highest Brahmin class. And one thing I would want to relate this to is something that is shared in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6. So Arjun asks Krishna that, if I start meditating, but, if I'm not able to attain full realization, if I'm not able to be successful, then, what's going to happen to me? I will not even be able to enjoy the world and its pleasures, but I will also not be able to enjoy full liberation. So what happens if someone who gets stuck like this, so to speak? So Krishna says that, for those people, no effort, any effort that you put in towards your spiritual practice, none of it ever really goes to waste. So for someone who starts a spiritual practice but is not able to go all the way, in the next birth, they are born in a family that is already quite religious and of a family of yogis or a family of sattvic people, so to speak, so that the soul can now continue in his new life, in his next life, just basically pick up where he left off from last time. So if you look at the lives of many saints, you can see this trend. So for example, Shiva Puri Baba, like I said, he was already born in a family that was quite religious and spiritual. His grandfather was always available to him there, and he was a great astrologer, and he was always able to support him early on in his life and in his development. Similarly, if we look at the lives of Paramahansa Yogananda, Lahiri Mahashaya, and if you read the autobiography of a yogi, there are stories of how these souls were also already born in good spiritual families and had the support early on. So if you're someone who is worried who has similar questions as Arjun, that, if I start meditating, but if I'm not successful, what's going to happen of me? I will get lost. Like, I didn't enjoy the world also, but I didn't enjoy spiritual realities as well. So, you, you might think that that goes to waste, but it doesn't. In your next life, you will still be supported, and you will be able to resume from where you left off. So yeah, I think that's a good thing, that I liked about this book and about the story of Shiva Puri Baba. That, clearly we can see that what Krishna says is true. And for someone who is interested in spirituality, you will have that support early on in your life itself. So yeah, he started studying, like I said, in the Brahmacharya ashram around the age of 5. He got done around the age of 14 or so. Around the age of 18, he left his family home and he went to live with his grandfather in the forest. And after his grandfather's death, he left that place as well and just completely renounced the world. So he went away. So he still lived with his grandfather in their home in the forest, but after his grandfather's death, he left that house also, and he became like a complete renunciate, complete sannyasi, where yeah, you don't have a home, you don't have a shelter, you're reliant on food for others, and yeah, your only aim, your sole focus is towards God realization. So after his grandfather's death, he spent about 30 years living in the forest, and while living in the forest, he relied on the roots of plants, so roots and fruits of plants. So essentially, he for 30 years he did nothing but, he ate roots like beetroot, potato, and radish, so on. So roots of the plants and fruits that were already there within the forest. So that is the only thing that he ate. He didn't eat anything else. He lived off of that for 30 years. He lived absolutely alone. No human interaction at all, because you're in a dense forest. There's nothing but animals there. And he spent all his time in meditation for 30 years. This was also something that I found like to be incredibly inspiring, because you have someone here who is basically just so dedicated to their goal and their aim in life that they are willing to go to such extremes as well. Today, thanks to the internet, thanks to technology, we have access to these information on yoga and meditation and so on, so easily available to us that we don't necessarily need to go away to the forest and in our search or quest for God realization. Today, if we live in such an environment that if we have a good comfortable home, if we have a stable job that provides a regular income for us, then with whatever free time we have essentially, if we spend about a few hours every day, maybe meditating for 30 to 60 minutes, reading for again 30 to 60 minutes, if that is all that you can do, that is a good simple life, but that will also continue to allow you to make spiritual progress. So there is this extreme example, someone who is really interested in spirituality, who is willing to leave everything and live in a forest for 30 years. And, that's not possible for most of us, and that is fine. But the point that I want to make is that, if someone is capable of doing that much, the least we can do is, spend like half an hour, 30 minutes, 60 minutes every day, meditating, reading, studying, and so on and so forth. There's definitely time in our lives. There's definitely energy. It's just that we need to be a bit more disciplined and start doing that. So yeah, I hope you can draw some inspiration from this, and yeah, hopefully that does help you make some more spiritual progress. So after spending 30 years in the forest, he did attain God realization, and then he came back into the world. Then he came back to fulfill his grandfather's wish, which was that he should go on a world pilgrimage. So that's why the name long pilgrimage. So then he decided to walk all over the world. And yeah, that was his pilgrimage, and he did that. So after he left the forest, he went on a pilgrimage across the world, and he walked across so many countries, and you can find more details about that in the book. But yeah, he walks across the world. He meets all kinds of kings and queens and lords of nations, and he meets really really important and powerful people, and he meets a lot of people. He shares insights with them, and so on. But yeah, I mean, after he completes the whole pilgrimage across the world, he settles in Nepal. So he goes to Nepal, and then in a village near the mountains, he has a small dwelling where he spends the rest of his days. And from there, he essentially shares his teaching with the people who come to him. And yeah, I think that is broadly it. Then that's how he spends the rest of his days. Again, another inspiring thing, or something that I found interesting about this, was a lot of us think that renunciation, spirituality, yoga, meditation, these are not life affirming. Like, it looks like someone is trying to escape from the world by practicing these things, but again, that is not necessarily the case, because you can see this through the lives of so many. Like, even Swami Vivekananda, he spent many years meditating in a cave. I think there is my sister had visited a cave in the north of India, which was supposed to be the cave in which Swami Vivekananda meditated. And he had the realization that, okay, you know what, now I need to go back into the world to serve the world. So he had that experience where he was meditating, he had his realization, and then he was like, okay, now I need to go back and help others. Similarly, was the case with Shiva Puri Baba, right? He spent 30 years meditating in a forest, but then he came back, he came outside the forest, walked across the whole world, and and the rest of his days he spent living in Nepal, answering questions of disciples who came to him, helping people live good, practical, simple, God-centered lives. So again, the point that I'm trying to make here is, yoga, spirituality, these are not necessarily about escaping from the world. They are about realizing who we are. They are about realizing the truth of ourselves. And once we're able to do that, it allows us to come back to the world and serve others, which can be incredibly inspiring and fulfilling. Not everyone needs to be of service to the world in a direct form. So, like, not all spiritual, or not all the people who meditate end up becoming meditation teachers. That's not what everyone is supposed to do. But you still do come back, and you bring in essentially more light and clarity into the world, and that is the kind of service that you offer. So yeah, I think that's broadly it from me. These were the things that I really enjoyed about the book, and this part of the book is essentially just the first chapter. So the first chapter summarizes his life, and yeah, this was a very very short summary of his life and some points that I found interesting. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you were able to find some inspiration from it. Yeah, if you have any thoughts, if you have any questions, do feel free to reach out in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.